Okay. So Founder Brown, same question.
So, yeah. So you have the stereotypes that's already there, um, as black men, and then to add that the next level of stereotype with the organization as well, makes High Five. There are just stereotypes with them. But then, like I said before, there are oaths and things that we sign up for when we do any type of Greek organization. There are standards that are set, and when those standards are set, we know, like if we do this, we're out of here.
Mhm.
So you have to also be careful of the moments that you have in life, and always ask yourself and come to a self level of reflection: is this going to cost me something if I do this in this moment of anger? That was all.
Okay. One of the things that was put out in the media was that one of the officers had Mr. Nichols sitting on the ground, leaning up against the vehicle, and had used his personal cell phone and taken 5 photos of him, bloody, beaten, hanging on for dear life, and text them to 5 individuals. And what I researched, and I wasn't able to get all into their policy and procedure, but in law enforcement, every department, I don't care where you're at, yes, there's some differences, but there's some standards. You have standards of what it is that's, expected of you when you're in uniform and when you're on a job. One of the standards for Memphis Police Department, their policy, they don't want officers on the job in uniform to use their personal cell phones because they feel like that's a distraction from you being aware, you being alert out there on the road in the field. And one of the questions I had and I thought about just from a law enforcement perspective is, even though people may think that that's something simple, which to me is still crazy. You're going to take a photo of a man that's laying on the ground, that's beaten half to death, hanging on for dear life. You're going to take a photo of him and send it to people. Like it's nothing from a law enforcement perspective that you can say that warrants that or covers that. But you have to understand, if people can overlook the small policy, how many other policies have they probably overlooked? How many times have they probably negated, what, like you said, what they took an oath for, what they stood for? From the body cam video, there was no, sir, we pulled you over for this, license, registration, proof of insurance. It wasn't anything of the standard. His car door was, swung open, and he was drug out of his vehicle immediately. You know what I mean? So these policies and procedures from a law enforcement perspective, and again, not all police officers, this Scorpion unit was a special unit, put together. It does not represent the whole Memphis Police Department, but it's just, I look at certain things when I see officers acting out of conduct as far as certain things, if you can do and have no regard for. I'm sure if they go down their history of arrest and their profile and their file or whatever, they'll find that there has been way more many policies and procedures that has been skipped, overlooked, and totally just ignored. Um, I want to ask this question because I've heard, you all, and I've heard it myself. People ask, well, what's next? Right? You all are Greek, you all are Christian. So, from the sense of you being Christian Greeks, what's next? Are y'all just going to pray and that's it? Are you just going to do a candlelight visual? What are we going to do as representatives of Christ in the earth? And I'd like to ask each of you to give your take on what is it that we can do as Christian Greeks, especially Christian African American Greeks, to do to bring more unity and to bring more accountability to those who bear the Greek letters, but not just that, but being men of color. President Ajay, I'll ask you first.
So it's so many things that we can do. So my organization, our national cause is mental health awareness.
Okay.
And so just from that standpoint, and I'm sure every organization here has something that they have a national cause, right? Ours just happens to be mental health. So from that very standpoint, we have an obligation and a duty as an organization to speak to that, to speak to the viewpoint of how someone can get to the point where they feel emboldened and bold enough to do something like that on camera
Okay.
and address that, bring awareness to that so that that thing does not happen again. But we also have to speak to how it affects those who see it and work to remedy the trauma that is brought on by continually seeing those images of people being beaten and abused and different things like that. So that's one thing I would recommend as an organization, any organization. Look at how you can serve your demographic, how you can help them get through that trauma, and how you can just be there for them through that. So that's one way that our organization is dealing with it. The second thing I would recommend is to, like I was saying earlier, we have to go beyond thoughts and prayers. So as an organization, start speaking to your representatives, start speaking to your police departments, right? Form a relationship with them. Like, don't let an incident like this be the only time you want to talk to the police, right? I think we have to get to a point where we're really beginning to form a relationship with these organizations that are here to serve us, right? We have to see and understand what they're going through, understand their policies, understand their procedures, right? Um, Invite them out to some of our community events and allow them to actually speak to those that we're serving while they're serving them in a different capacity. I know like a couple years ago, for example, there were some firefighters, and this wasn't my organization. This was actually my church, but there were some firefighters. There was a firehouse down the street from the church that we were at, and historically, we only saw these firefighters when they came to respond to an incident.
Okay.
Right? We only saw them when they were working. We only encountered them or asked for them when we needed something from them.
Yes.
But we didn't understand that those firefighters are actually living at the firehouse away from their families for an extended period of time. They're putting their lives on the line and they rarely get a thank you, right? So what the ministry decided to do was we're going to take X, Y, and Z days every month, and we're going to go to that firehouse and we're going to serve those firefighters. We're going to make them dinner. We're going to sit with them. We're going to converse with them. We're going to learn about their lives. We're going to learn about their stories, and we're going to connect and build a relationship so that it's not just a what can you do for me situation. We're actually invested in those people's lives. And when we're invested in their lives, when they actually have to come out and do something for us, it's not a job. It's I have to run on this call to care for my family. And a lot of times, if you've had a family member in the hospital, the best nurses are the nurses who connect with the patients, right? And so, likewise, when we have police officers in these communities and they're putting their lives on the line, and for all the innocent officers out there who now have to deal with the backlash of what the few bad apples are doing, they need to see people like us reach out to them. They need to know that they still have family out there, because that's going to be step one of police officers actually being able to police better. When they feel like those that they are serving are family, those that they are serving respect what they do, those that they are serving are not going to continually now have to be on a defensive every time they come into contact with them. So my second that's my second recommendation, is to actually jump out there and connect, build a relationship with these officers. And let's just stop the back and forth of, you're bad because everybody else did this. No, like, we have to, as a Christian organization, as a Christian man, I have to at some point realize that I play a part in this circle.
Yes.
And my part is to reach out, create a relationship so that we can begin to forge a better relationship across the board. And I don't want to take up all the time, so I'm going to pass the mic to one of my counterparts.
All right. Founder Brown, same question.
I think our next step is an action step. We have talked, we have had these discussions before, but now it's time for us to take action. I can agree with the national president when he said, go into those, the firefighters, go into those places that are frontliners on the police department, be at those as city hall meetings. We have to begin to be in those spaces where we need to be seen at. We can be Greek organizations, Christian Greek organizations, but if we're not seen on the forefront, then we're really not doing the work. You know what I'm saying? It's bigger work than just, yes, I pledge this Christian organization, but am I being seen in the forefront for people to know me? If I'm being seen at the city hall and being seen all these different places, then that is the step where now in the Bible, I'm taking dominion and authority because I'm everywhere. So that is our next step, being in those places. I'm agreeing definitely with national president.
Okay. VP, Mr. Lee.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a rich question. And my mind is sort of spinning as the other brothers have been expounding upon next steps. I think sort of attending to something you said is, other than prayer, is most times people push into what are you doing other than prayer, because most people don't move into action out of prayer because they had not prayed to get an answer and a response. So when most people are saying we're praying for you or for this or for a circumstance scenario, and then you look at the fruit thereof, you're left wondering, what did you really do? I think in this, it is understanding, I look at this as Mr. Tyre's circumstance and his family, the Nichols family circumstance and situation, as, another thing that's happened. That probably sounds really bad, but it's happened because of the lack of proactive outreach and work that needs to occur. I think proactively it is moving and expanding in the missions and visions that we have of supporting men in whatever ways that we have it already outlined in our visions. I think it's seeking to understand the unique needs of the different communities in which we're in. And so whether we have local chapters or we're thinking about a national office and where that's located is what are the unique needs in that area, and what are the interests and needs of the people in those areas, not from our own perspectives, where in some cases, some people are living nice lives and are not in areas where poverty is persistent and pervasive, not living in a space where, places are understaffed and people are trying to constantly protect the community because of the outcomes of poverty on people and the behaviors that you see from, constant, consistent, oppressive circumstances. But I think it's understanding those needs, understanding those desires, and then enacting even the simplest of steps that would allow us to make an impact on a youth, an officer, a family, or whatever that comes out of a comprehensive agenda. So if one is talking to the officers, maybe another is talking with youth, another is talking with families, another is talking with women, another is talking with, schools, where we're really creating a wraparound engaging service and experience for our communities. But a lot of it too is we have to be in position to help those that are on the front lines, and which is, the people that are living the everyday lives and everyday experiences, in organizing and mobilizing in ways that they need to accomplish their goals. And so we often talk about what the police should do. We often talk about what government should do. Well, all of that spawns from what the people decide they want. And so just like what we've seen in times past through history, if you boycott buses, right? If you march across a bridge, if you eat at the counter, or sit at the counter, if you, right, it is the coming together of people to do and accomplish what they're saying they want to do. And sometimes there's that role of, I'm not here to do it for you. I'm here to help organize or help embellish or promote the message in broader spaces amongst other communities. So I know that feels or sounds like a roundabout way of things, and maybe it's not as clear as I'm thinking in my head, but there's value in being in position to support those that are really going to do the heavy lifting. Because every time we talk about changing something with the police or whatever, there are those that are living in these communities and environments that need something. Maybe it's not what we currently have, maybe it's a reimagined something. But they're the ones that will ultimately lead it. And so how do we position ourselves to help in the gap areas as people come together and identify how they want to move forward as a community, or if they want to move forward as a community?
Okay, thank you. I'll say this and then we'll go. We definitely have to do a part 2 to this. And this may sound strange from someone who is a former police officer. I feel that one of the things that needs to be done is qualified immunity needs to be taken away from cops automatically. There should not be where an officer, he decides if he's going to take somebody's life or not, and in the back of his mind already knowing that he has qualified immunity. There's certain things that you're taught at the police department. There are certain things you're taught on the job where it somewhat covers you, where you could be covered by the blanket of qualified immunity. Why do I say that? Because I've been told as a police officer, I've been trained that one of the easiest ways to cover your actions on the street is to immediately yell out, "Stop resisting," right? They made a fervent gesture. Those two statements right there, cops have been able to hide under the blanket of qualified immunity because it's always said, well, if you fear for your life, if they made a fervent gesture, there's been cops, whether day or night, where folks have went for their wallets because they were asked for their ID. You asked me for my ID, I reached for my wallet, you shoot me up full of holes, and then it said that I made a fervent gesture. Well, I was following a lawful command, because then you could use it against me if I don't follow a lawful command, right? You want to place me under arrest. So it's all these little trigger things that a lot of law enforcement use where they know I'll somewhat be protected. All right. The next thing, and this is really from the governmental point of view, and I'm not trying to ruffle no feathers or offend nobody, but it needs to be fair across the board. We may never see that in our time, right? Like Dr. King said, when he gave the vision in the mountaintop and see white kids and black kids holding hands and playing or whatever, what did he say in that speech? I may never see the day, right? Physically, but I see the day happening. We may never see the day where folks that are not black or brown skinned are held accountable, but this is something that needs to be fought for. You know, if it's going to be wherein murder is wrong, then it needs to be wrong across the board, regardless of who do it. There's a difference from there was an altercation and someone died in the midst of the altercation versus you intentionally go out and murder. There's a difference. You know, when we look at our legal breakdown, that's why you have murder. That's why you have manslaughter. That's why you have first, second, third degree, or so forth, because the intent, all right, from the way things look, and everything has not been totally sifted out or anything, but just from the camera that was over head in the lamp and the body cams that showed what happened, it was an intentional situation where Mr. Nichols was going to be harmed. There was nothing pleasant. There was nothing nice. There was nothing standard about that stop. The only thing that was standard was they flicked the lights, his car stopped, they stopped behind him, and they got out. Everything after that was, it was to the wolves. It was only the strong survive, right? It was like if you ever watch Animal Planet and you see animals that hunt in packs, that's exactly what it looked like. He was prey and they were predators. So there needs to be accountability. We, you know, we can speak up and demand. You know, one thing that, you know, we have to look at, there is a document that starts off with "We the people of the United States," the preamble. All right. And we have to think about that. We the people. Yeah, we were never considered, you know, equal to some of those who were slave masters or whatever the case would be. But nowadays, we the people, we have a voice. All right. We're going to have to come together. You know, we're not going to be able to look at each other as far as, you know, you better than me and what you got or whatever. It's not about materialism. All right. It's about humanity. We, the people, have to be concerned about humanity. All right. President Jai, Founder Brown, I've never met you in person, but guess what? You all are my brothers. I have to be concerned about you all, right? There's going to be times where, hey, I may send you a text just thinking about you, bro, wellness check, right? Not because I'm better, not because I think I'm special, just because it's a humanity thing. You know, my national vice president can tell you there's times when I was online, I reached out to him. Times where after I got offline, I reached out to him every once in a while. Why? I want to make sure you're okay. I can't call you my brother from an organizational point of view and from a Christianity point of view and not show love and concern. How can I not check on my brother and be my brother's keeper? So that's you know, just my take on it. But you know, we have state level, you know, rules and regulations, and we have federal rules and regulations. And for those to be in place, now you have to be accountable. You have to watch those. Hey, you know, I don't care who the officer is. I don't care what their family legacy is or dynamic. You know, if they break the rules, if they're out of line, you know, you can't just go around, you know, doing what you want to folks like it's back in the 40s and 50s. You know, you put a noose around somebody's neck and drive down the street, and you wear a sheriff's, you know, uniform during the daytime, and you wear a white sheet at nighttime, and it's okay, and there's no accountability. The days of that is over with, because what we don't want to happen as a nation, and I'm not promoting this at all, we don't want folks to arise and now have no regard for law enforcement or authority. We don't want that to happen, you know, all because of the fact of the lack of respect for humanity. I don't have to have your last name. I don't have to have red hair and blue eyes, but I'm going to respect you because you're a human being. All I ask for is the same respect in return. And if you don't feel you can respect me, why not just tolerate me from a distance? But don't try to kill me. I don't want your knee on my neck. I don't want your knee in my back. I don't want it to be wherein, I'm scared to go to the grocery store at night to feed my family, all because of the narrative I may not make it home because of the color of my skin. I'm very fair skinned, and I never dealt with a racist problem until the years that I moved to Georgia. And I was actually called a boy to my face because they knew, if nothing else, I wasn't their race. I wasn't their culture and their background. So it doesn't matter the shade, the skin tone. My national VP has dreadlocks. I don't. But guess what? We're going to be called the same thing in the eyes of a racist. So I just want to end on that note. I thank you, gentlemen, for your time, for your wisdom, for your input on this, because it's a much needed conversation that needs to happen on a national level. It needs to happen in hallways of colleges, universities, high schools, where we have to come together and we have to change the narrative to make anybody think that any race, gender, creed, color, can be treated worse than a dog in the street. So I thank you all. Before we leave, I'm going to allow each of you, brethren, to once again state who you are and tell us what organization you're coming from. And we're going to dismiss on that. Mr. Lee.
Thank you for this evening and great conversation with you, brothers, this evening. Again, Stratton Lee, National Vice President with Gamma Phi Delta Christian Fraternity, Incorporated.
All right. President Ajay.
Likewise, it's an honor to be here. Appreciate the invitation and look forward to future conversations. For those who missed it, my name is Brian Ajay, and I serve as National President, International President of Alpha Nu Omega Incorporated, founded at Morgan State University in 1988.
All right. And Founder Brown.
All right. It has been a pleasure to be amongst some giants in this Christian Greek fraternity world, being the youngster on the block. I'm Founder Brown, Founder Jamarlo Brown, representing Omega Rho Psi. It was such a pleasure, man. I'm speechless right now. I'm with some OGs in the game. I'm with some OGs in the game right now. So well, definitely.
Listen, my brothers, we definitely will not make this a one-time thing. We should get together more often, even if it's a quarterly thing, to talk about other issues wherein it's concerning us as Christian Greeks, us as Black men, here in America. So I pray that all of you stay safe. I pray that all of you continue to grow in the favor and in the grace of God, Jesus Christ. And I pray that all of our organizations continue to have positivity, continue to have growth, and continue to make a mark in this nation where we can help change some lives. So you brothers, I thank you. You have a wonderful night, wonderful evening. Continue to fight the good fight of faith, and we will talk again soon.
All right.
Here we go. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, 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 wherever you are. This is the much anticipated and needed conversation. Greeks speak out. Let's have the conversation. We're going to be talking about the event, the merciless event that happened with Mr. Tyre Nichols. And I'd like to introduce or have them introduce my panelists. They can introduce themselves and let you know what organizations they're a part of, and then we can get this started. I'll start with Mr. Stratton Lee.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Stratton Lee. I am the National Vice President for Gamma Phi Delta Christian Fraternity, Incorporated, founded in March 21, 1988.
Okay. Mr. National President Brian, you can go next.
Hey, greetings, everybody. Brian Ajay, serve as National President of Alpha Nu Omega Incorporated, founded in 1988 on campus of Morgan State University here in Baltimore, Maryland. And it's an honor to be here and join this conversation.
All right. And Mr. Brown, you can introduce yourself.
Greetings, everybody. I am the founder of Omega Rho Psi, established in 2020. So I'm the youngin' on the block. It's glad to be here with y'all fellas just to have this discussion.
All right. And myself, I am Dev Campbell. I am the Regional Midwest Vice President of Gamma Phi Delta Christian Fraternity Incorporated. And we're going to have the conversation. So the first thing I'd like to ask you gentlemen, we've seen many different accounts of men that have been murdered, that has been tortured, where there's been misjustices made against them from a law enforcement perspective. And we're not going to say all law enforcement anything, but what do you think about when you see the events that has happened? And primarily we're talking about the event with Mr. Tyre Nichols. What went through your head if you saw the video, if you didn't see the video, if you just heard of what happened through the news? As a man of color and as a Christian Greek, what was it that went through your head concerning that? I'll start with Founder Brown.
Probably one of the major things that went through my mind was we already have a target on our back, and for us to be continuing to kill each other is bad. It's real bad. And then when the stories came out, how everything was kind of connected, we just got a lot of angry people out here, and to see lives just taken in the midst of anger is kind of outrageous, and it starts to really put me in perspective. You know, people that are called to serve and protect, they have issues as well that need to be handled outside of the job. You know, some things just let business be business, but don't let me bring what's going on the outside into the workspace and then something happens. You know, so it was pretty outrageous to me, the whole situation.
Okay. President Ajay, same question.
When I heard about it, without any knowledge of who was involved, just knowing that it was another Black man who was on the receiving end of injustice, my heart was broken. It's really unfortunate, and it's discouraging that we continue to have to endure the pain and the anguish and the agony of just existing as a Black man. So to just hear point blank that another Black man had been abused and then subsequently had passed away from his injuries, it was heartbreaking. But then to find out on top of that those that were responsible were also Black men was even more devastating. And I didn't really delve into reasoning. I'm literally just hearing of the whole connection and everything. I didn't really jump into details of why it happened. The fact of the matter is it shouldn't have happened. We should not be in this present day and time. And I have to fear for my life as a Black man to just get in my car and drive down the street. The fact that I even have to have a conversation with my children at a young age, or even, you know, my nieces and nephews who are adults, I have to have conversations with them about how to interact with law enforcement when they're driving home in the dark. Or I have to tell them, I think it's good for you to get home before it gets dark because I don't want you to end up in a situation like that. The fact that I have to have that conversation is troubling, extremely troubling. So for me, just overall, I'm heartbroken. I do want to say my thoughts and prayers. I'm still praying for the Nichols family. I'm praying for every person who was affected by that tragedy. I'm praying for people who are still dealing with the grief of losing their family members in past years. But with that said, we have to come to a point where this type of behavior is just not accepted, and it has to go beyond thoughts and prayers. Some sort of action has to begin to take place because this can't be tolerated anymore.
Right. Vice President Lee, same question.
Yeah. So similarly, I mean, I'll say I was triggered by all that's happened and still am. And every time a circumstance or situation arises where we hear this sort of same story, same narrative, different actors and players within it, it just takes me back to recognizing and understanding the effects of racism and slavery that's played out time and time again. And that regardless of who the bad actors are, the circumstances, the situations, is that seeing that the machine has been started, it's been running, it's operating, and no matter who you put into it, it will always create the same results that will suggest that somehow Black lives are less than, and that somehow it is justified to enact harsher treatments and behaviors and punishments, and somehow we can display it almost like it's you know, a TV show, and people should stand and watch and celebrate or mourn. So it's one of those experiences that, you know, I feel for the people, I feel for the families, I feel for the community, and all those that are a part of the fallout of this. But it also just signals again for me that I believe what was already said, that there is an action that is needed by our communities to push toward a greater change.
Okay. And I'll say this, even though I'm the host, I immediately thought about my children. I believe President Ajay said that as well. I thought about my children because my sons and my daughters, they're older as far as, you know, the teenage line. So, you know, with them newly driving and, you know, wanting to be out and about and experience adulthood, even having a former law enforcement background myself, I know that, you know, I really want to go old school and have them in the house before the street lights come on, you know, wherein I know that they're safe, because my prayer is that they don't encounter one of those bad apples that we've seen time and time again. Even if they tell them, you know, my father's a police officer or whatever the case may be, you have so much evil and so much ignorance out there in the world, you never can tell what can happen. So, you know, I thought about, you know, my children and again, so many others. My next question is, you know, and I don't want to harp on this because, you know, we're not to bash, we're not to ridicule, but we want to try to bring resolution and healing to the nation. But for it to be discovered that 3 of the African-American officers are members of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, I had people that knew nothing about Greek life, but as soon as that observation was made public, they wanted to, just attack all Greek organizations. You know, I found myself defending, you know, my Christian, you know, Greek organization, and people knew nothing about it. They just knew, oh, you're Greek, you're one of them, you know, and I heard that constantly, and people saying, oh, that's what they do, or that's how they act, or whatever. I'm going to ask all of you gentlemen, have you come under any scrutiny due to the fact of 3 of those officers were of the Divine Nine or Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated? I'll start with you, Vice President Lee.
I personally, and thank you for that question, I personally have not come under scrutiny for any of that. And while I've heard some narratives around what this means for Greek life, I look at it in the sense of it is a part of, again, the systems that are in place that try to prove that something that is Black is negative.
Yes.
I think about, I didn't know which organizations they were a part of, but I think about what media and those that perpetuate these stories are tending to do is to create these sort of meta-narratives, sub-narratives around everyone that's in it to suggest something positive or something negative. And I think that in the landscape of what's happening with Greek life at different universities, what's happening with Greek organizations and their communities and their acts of service and brotherhood and education and all those sort of things that we all have and hold true to, is that there's an effort to diminish the work of hundreds and thousands of brothers, Black men that have done a great set of things through the generations. And instead of thinking about it as one particular person that has a set of circumstances and situations and scenarios that has them in this particular space, we try as people to try to tag in all of these other really somewhat disconnected strings to say or suggest something. So I would imagine they would suggest something negative based on the traditional stereotypes of that particular organization and the men that are there, again, to suggest that potentially and allegedly, right, that these are angry Black men that lack control, that are brutal, that abuse and misuse people and blah, 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 blah. Where in this situation is, yes, people did do negative things that affected and impacted someone, but it is not representative of the entire and the whole of whatever group they're a part of. Because if they can start with the fraternity, what do they say next when it's their church?
Right.
Or mosque? Right. What do they say next when it's the family? Is the family all of what they're trying to make it to be? So I generally tend to think toward the individual, not all that they're connected to, even though we recognize that what we're connected to also influences parts of who we are. But we have those moments in time where we all fail and fall short of whatever commitments that we've had made.
Okay, thank you. President Ajayi, same question.
So I know my organization, we have not gotten any scrutiny per se. We have gotten questions about, what is our response? What's next? And, our organization, we look at this situation, and as I stated earlier, it's discouraging, it's disgusting. That type of behavior is not something that we support. And on top of thoughts and prayers, again, I believe that some sort of action needs to take place. Accountability needs to be set and met across the board. But what I will say is this, and I may be jumping ahead, so I apologize. I do want to say that the actions that Omega Psi Phi fraternity took in the aftermath, I thought was very important. While they prayed for the victim, they frowned upon the actions of their members. Mm-hmm. They also, from what I read, withdrew membership from those members for various different reasons that I'm not privy to, but they withdrew membership from those members. They held them accountable. Mm-hmm. And I say all that to say this. I pray, even though I pray that no thing like that happens again. If it does, I pray that the accountability that was set before those men is set before every officer of every color, of every creed that chooses to abuse their power in the future. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Founder Brown, same question.
For me, is I think it was National VP when he talked about the stereotypes. Like, it's a lot of stereotypes that's already out there, but then it adds on when something happens. Now it's just not Omega Psi Phi that's out there, but it's a black man. They already have this thing about black men. They're angry. They got all this other stuff, but you add that on top of it. And true enough, like the national president said, the organization did take a step and withdraw their membership. And you have to know, when you pledge whatever organization, there are standards that is there. And when you do not do those standards, there are repercussions for those standards. So I can definitely